Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today I'm joined by Manfred Olbrich, founder and CEO of LessonWise, scaling the access to affordable private education worldwide through online group lessons delivered in a state-of-the-art virtual classroom is the official description of LessonWise. But of course, we have the founder Manfred here, so get ready for a conversation where we go through how it is really like to build a startup in London and what they've done so far. So welcome, Manfred.
Thank you, Ozan. Thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to it.
It's a particularly difficult time for startups. I don't know if you've been following the news about especially lots of growth stocks losing value, 50%, 70%, 25%. I think even Spotify is like down by 70%, if I'm not mistaken. And some other even more. Even Google, Amazon, they're like down by 40%. It's just a crazy time. So tell us about how the last few months have been for you as a startup.
Yeah, I think the most challenging part has been raising money. There's a sense of, a recession looming, and I think investors are, sticking to their guns and being careful. And, they were quite bullish or aggressive, I guess, the second quarter of this year. But then, things happen over the summer. Also, the interest rates increasing last week, September. So they've been really wary of things. It's, even though we've enjoyed very good traction in terms of the number of users, and we started, we cracked early revenues in August, which are all things that investors look out for. They were still not coming on board enough. I've been pitching tirelessly for the last 4 months or so, and, something I need to keep on doing. Because obviously money is the lifeline and the oxygen of a startup. So I think for that has been particularly challenging. The fact that, really selling your company in a time like this is quite difficult because, people are just, being wary, taking care of themselves, I guess.
That's indeed correct. How do you think the sentiment of investors are changing, the conversations and the way they approach startups? Do you think it is more focused on short-term profitability over long-term scalability and growth?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So, if I remember my conversations, we did a round in March. That was essentially the first round of investment where we actually approached external investors. So after friends and family, that was our first one. And it was around, so the pitch that I did was, we're going to get to 20,000 students by the end of the year. So it was about traction and really building the volume of users in my platform and, really bringing the message of affordable private tuition to the masses, right?
How many do you have, by the way?
We have 4,500 at the moment.
Okay, amazing.
So really encouraging, yeah. So at the time it was, we're going to get to that critical mass of 20,000. And then we talk about, making money and generating revenues then, just because, once we have that level of that volume of community, then it's more viable to make money. And they bought into that because, for them, it was more growth and, really getting that traction up. And they were not really thinking about money, that comes down the line. It's better to just scale rapidly and gain users, etc. And, have that traction going as opposed to make money. But then that rapidly changed, and I had a bit of a stormy period over the summer because I think investors are generally inactive or, I guess, slower in responding when it comes to summer. Same happens in Christmas, for example. But then, the ordeal with interest rates in the UK, then they, became even more inactive. So it was really hard to reach them. And I think that the sentiment changed towards you need to build a sustainable business, right? So now it's about, try to build a sustainable business where you stand on your own 2 feet as quickly as possible. So bring the profitability post forward. Don't speak about it. We're going to be profitable in 3 years. And I need to happen in 2. That's how I see it. And if you have the processes and if you have, the proof of concept, how do you make money? Is it recurring? That's extremely powerful and strong at the moment because, there's a clear path towards you being sustainable. And that's what matters right now. I guess that's, yeah.
Indeed. Let me ask your thoughts on something. About a few years ago, I was having a chat with my co-founder in a previous startup, and it was a video learning startup. So it's quite relevant. And we were talking about growth and how some of our competitors, not direct competitors, but other startups perhaps were focused on scaling, but they were not profitable. And we were always having this chat. This is not sustainable. startups. Like they need to be profitable as well. They need to make money because it is the foundation of a business. Is
Exactly.
to be able to grow at it is kind of the signal that validates, okay, I'm creating enough value for people, the fact that you make money.
Yeah.
But I would never have guessed that this would be how it happened. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Basically, economic crisis
Yeah.
causing an increase in interest rates, that in turn meaning government bonds or other assets are safer investments as opposed to growth stocks. And that in turn changing how people approach investing in a startup. So there's like this connection that I can see pretty clearly with hindsight, but I would never have guessed this is the way
Yeah.
it would happen. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's been abrupt, to say the least, and I think the market or investors, change rapidly from one day to the next. But I think over the past, I guess after the financial crisis, it was all, funding and loading startups left and right without much due diligence, I would say. So a lot of people were just receiving big ticket investments. But indeed, it has changed. And, after the pandemic and, what the government did to keep businesses afloat. So I think that all has repercussions that, not backfire, but they come around. And that's what happened. Now we have, high inflation and the fact that there's a bit of a recession looming. I think it was inevitable that the sentiment was going to change. And I think it's probably going to be the case for the next 2 years. At least that's what the Bank of England is speaking about, a recession for the next 2 years. So I think it was coming our way, and we could see, me and my business partners, we were speaking about this also in May, and, it seemed like it is going to be the case that the focus is going to be on revenues. We still pitched the idea of growth, etc., but this is going to change. And I think it was bound to happen. And now with the interest rates exploding and in September, even more so. So I think it's something that every startup needs to be able to pivot and be flexible and just react as quickly as possible. And in the context of LessonWise, I guess one of the positive things, I guess it would be a blessing in disguise, is that our focus is a little bit recession proof, our business per se, because we focus on bringing affordable tuition to the masses, which means, people even during recession need to have access to education, right? And affording a tutor is not particularly the case for the majority of society. I would dare say that I guess the top 1% can afford a private tutor.
Indeed.
So what we do in this case is we offer group lessons, which offer that affordable access to students because they end up sharing the cost of the lesson. And it also has the added benefit that tutors can scale. They can earn much more in 1 hour of their time as opposed to doing it one-on-one. So it scales the access to private education there and then. And it's something that is very sustainable even during a recession because, it's a powerful message to be able to access, a lesson for, I guess, £7.5. And things like that.
It is. And people will be looking for cheaper alternatives that create value, and you're bundling an experience perhaps, and it has value. It is cheaper perhaps. And so it is a good, perhaps, direction for the business. But can you tell us about the focus of these lessons? So just so that people can understand it a bit more. So what class are you focused in? How do people, what's the user experience like? Who's your stereotypical customer? How do you reach out to them? And all of those things. I'm really curious.
So if I can start with a bit of context about myself,
of course.
I might expand that a little bit too much. So anyway, I was working as a private tutor for the last 8 years, and eventually I was.
What was your focus?
It was physics and maths and music. So
amazing, interesting combination as well.
Yeah. So I guess my background is in mechanical engineering and in music. So I did a degree in mechanical engineering. Then I worked in Germany for 4 years as a designer, mechanical design engineer.
Wow.
Then did a trip around the world, and then I came to London to study music. It was a passion of mine since I was a kid. And in between those,
and what did you study in music? Which instrument or which direction?
What
is the right? It's an area I'm ignorant, so I don't even know how to ask the right question. Over what in music did you study? Perhaps that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, so you obviously have classical music, right? Which is classically trained musicians. Royal College of Music, etc. But you also have the Berkeley approach, which is modern styles and modern genres of music, and that's what I did. Basically, it's a Bachelor of Music in popular music performance.
I see. Okay.
You're essentially trained to be a session musician, which is the guy you call on a Wednesday and say, "Hey, we have a gig on Friday. You need to learn these 40 songs."
Hmm.
It's all across the board in terms of genres. You just have to prepare for it, and
And what instrument do you play?
play the guitar. Yeah, so
Amazing.
guitar.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, it was a beautiful experience. In fact, to study music was one of my dreams, and I did work as a session musician. I toured. I played Glastonbury 1 year with my band. So it was exhilarating years. It was pretty fascinating and exciting that time in London. And back to the tuition is essentially I found private tuition in the middle of all the things that I can do as a reasonable thing to help me sustain my life here, essentially. And at the beginning it was just to make ends meet and just treat it as my backup, essentially, whilst I still pursue music. But then eventually I took it on full time. It was my sole vocation, and it just escalated and exploded for me. Essentially, I was being referred left and right. I was doing consistently almost 35 hours of tuition every single week, which was quite exciting and quite encouraging. But I think even though I was successful and I was doing quite well, I could also see that that was the ceiling. That was the end for my job as a tutor. Essentially, I couldn't do more than 35 hours a week, just because you account for commuting and drafting reports, developing that relationship.
Doesn't scale.
It's a lot of work, and that's it. I just couldn't do anything else, and there is no scale. And reaching the end of my career was a little bit disappointing, and I couldn't accept it. I wanted to go to the next level, and that on one side, I really wanted to scale as a private educator because I was doing well, really well, in fact. But on the flip side, I was also seeing, it is a very interesting service, and it's one that kind of changes the life of a student or a person even. And almost every single tuition I would receive the most unbelievable feedback after the tuition. Like you brought my son up to X grades and he's much more confident, much happier. So it's a service that people need to be aware of and they need to be able to access because it changes lives. So
it is something that I've done for about 4.5 years. So I do definitely agree with you and have a good window into the effect that it creates in people's life, especially if you have a caring teacher. Take time, and especially if you are a person who likes to think out of the box. And I definitely can tell you are one of those people because you have first a variety of experience. One, the mechanical engineering side, the other side, music, the other side, the commercial side of things. I would pretty confidently guess if I was stuck with a problem, you would find a different way of representing that problem and making the student think in a different way. And that's, I think, the quality of a great tutor.
Yeah, absolutely. Is problem solving and being intuitive and having the soft skills to recognize what is it that can maximize the outcome of this student or unlock their potential, make them feel comfortable.
So key skill for entrepreneurship. Good, coincidentally, great coincidence for you, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So I saw this is crazy. How is the service overlooked in my eyes? Because it's treated as something else, something additional, but I'm actually changing the life of people ongoingly. So every single year that I'm delivering tuition programs for students, there's always a new story of success, and it's super rewarding and super meaningful for me, very profound. So how can I bring this to more people? Because I secured myself in that top spectrum of society, the really able families of London, essentially. I was fortunate to be in that position, but there's the world, there's the other 99% of people that need to access this, because I think it would solve most of society's problems. The fact that you can sort out that attainment gap between those who can afford private tuition, those who can't. Well, the tutoring space can definitely sort that out. So I thought, so how do I sort this out? How do I sort out the problem of access? How do I give this access to private tuition and those benefits to more people on one side? And how do I scale? Because I found myself locked and trapped in that model of one-to-one, just doing it one by one and doing 35 hours of tuition a week, completely maxed out. So I thought, naturally, and later I found that this is in the psyche of most tutors, and it was group lessons, group tuition. Because basically, you help students access the same tutor, the same quality educator at a fraction of the cost. They're sharing the cost of the lessons, and that's sorted. And also for me, I obviously will be earning more than if I was just teaching one single student. So I went online, tried to find something that was comprehensive and reasonable, but it was extremely disjointed and extremely complex to do it. Sure, you can build your own website, drive traffic to it, running ads, etc. But it's an uphill battle for the one-man band, the single freelancer, the tutor. It was pretty hard. So I just decided to do it myself, right? And I pitched this idea to the father of one of my students, in fact. And he loved it. And he's a financier. He's in the hedge fund industry, and he decided to fund it and back it early on, which was a pivotal moment in my life, actually.
Amazing. And you have usually this is something I can empathize as well. When you have been helping somebody's children, then you have a good trust base on that relationship, and you're almost like an extended member of the family. So that's a great in, perhaps.
Exactly. It also a tutor also becomes that person. It's like the confidant of the family. They trust them. They ask them for advice. It's just a unique service, essentially. So yeah, he loved the idea and he backed it. And this was in 2019 December when we had the conversation. Pretty casual conversation after a lesson. I just thought, hey, I'm trying to scale. I want to do this, and he bought it basically and said, let's do it. And then I spent the entire lockdown drafting the requirements of LessonWise, basically. So lockdown for me, even though it was difficult and I was locked away in my house, it gave me the time and the freedom to actually just, sit down and put my vision onto paper. And my vision meant, all the user journeys that I envisioned in my platform, essentially. So then we approached a team of developers in India. And the development started. That was the summer of 2020, in the midst of lockdown still. And then fast forward to 2021, that's when we launched the MVP of the platform. And, it was that vehicle that sorted my problem, essentially, that one that can scale the access to private education and through group lessons, basically. On the one hand, I bring affordable private tuition to the masses, and I also help tutors scale. My group of people, I help them scale. And it was, extremely well received by tutors initially because they saw the potential. And as I said, it's in the psyche of most tutors. Group tuition is the future of private education in their eyes as well. So they said, I'm sold. I'm going to create my account. So it was pretty staggering the pace at which we acquired tutors the first 6 months or so. And initially I saw this as a utility vehicle. The way I saw LessonWise initially was, I'm just going to offer this great piece of technology which has, a custom-made virtual classroom that can have even more than 100 participants in a single classroom. It has payment processing. It has all the tools you would need to run your teaching, and it also, stay in touch with your students. And it also has a marketplace where you can actually, share your content and attract students yourself as well. So surely they're going to bring their students and use the platform. And
let me just interrupt you there for a second, because I think this bit is really important. What is the real value and the real focus of your product, in the sense that you can basically use Zoom, set up a conference, bring people together. You can set up a payment structure, payment gateway with Stripe, PayPal, and 20 other solutions out there. You can basically use platforms like Circle.co, I think was it called, or many others which are around community building. So you can build a platform there. So is it the technology? Is it the fact that you curate the right type of high quality tutors? Is it the way the selection process, or like what's the meat there, in the way that you think about it?
So all those platforms you mentioned, we have them all in a single solution, basically, all of them. So yes, you surely can, process payments on the side, but it becomes a very disjointed experience. And also the virtual classroom is specifically designed for education. I've been doing it for a long time, and I know what can make a difference, what can help to strive for better teaching. And I have designed that accordingly. So, things like graph generators and embedding video and audio on the whiteboard, things as simple as a calculator, the ability to generate grids, etc., and, add screenshots, resources into the whiteboard.
You make it easier for the tutor as well. So that the takeaway from it?
Yes, exactly. And, the community building side of things, we have the spaces for you to directly interact with your students. And that's something that you don't really have that, not even in the massive players of the space. I would quote Go Student, which in fact are from Vienna, as we were speaking about it earlier.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was in Vienna yesterday for our
So
guests are listening in.
yeah, so they're unicorn essentially, but you don't know who else is in that platform. So you as a student, yeah, you have a lesson with a tutor, but it's a very transactional model. You cannot connect with like-minded people in that platform. You can't. You can't see them. You can't interact with them. We have opened that communication completely because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of growth potential in the social interactivity among students, because what I want to do is also replicate what happens in the real world. I guess you have the execution of the lesson in a classroom, but then you have the spaces where people can interact and exchange ideas and maybe team up for another lesson. And that's something we also offer. And again, going back to what you were saying, yes, you have all these alternatives, but we have built them all in a single platform that is destined towards education and offering quality content. And if I expand on that a little bit more, because it's something you asked initially, I think I digress a little bit.
No, that was perfect. I mean, I think these are all very valid parts of building a business. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what it is, in your experience, like to build a startup specifically in London. How do you think it would be? How do you think it turned out to be? Were you surprised by anything? Were you disappointed? Were you disappointed by anything? What's your experience been in terms of what the city has to offer to entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think the opportunities are here without a doubt. That on one hand, you actually have the opportunity to connect with the right individuals. So, network with other founders, or, put yourself in front of the right decision maker. I put myself in front of, the hedge fund manager when I was delivering a lesson. That I think that only happens in London, just because the ecosystem is built for startups to thrive, I guess. In that sense, it is a fantastic city to be in. That on one side, also the funding side of things, there's, countless funds and, starting from VC funds, angel investors. So there's access to funds. Just obviously it's not that easy as to, I'm going to definitely get money in London. It doesn't work like that, but the opportunities are here. That on one side, I guess that's the positive side of things. On the other hand is, it's an extremely expensive city. And, building a startup comes with a lot of sacrifices. You have to dedicate yourself wholeheartedly and solely to this for it to be successful, right? And as you know, the first 2-3 years of a startup, you don't really pay yourself a salary as a founder. At least I didn't.
Yeah.
So that means you have to make ends meet somehow. So you're maxed out, flat out, all the time, basically. And it's taxing. And so, I guess it's particularly hard from that point of view because, it's not the most affordable city in the world, but the opportunities are here. Funding, but also grants from the government. There's many things you can explore, and you can connect with the right people in the city without a doubt. And it's just be aware of the fact that you also will sacrifice a lot to get there, basically.
How do you think the school experience is different today compared to 20 years ago?
The school, as in schools, education?
Yeah, students, the experience of a high school student, in your experience, how do you think is different? Because this is something I've been thinking, and I think it plays also into what people expect from your service and how they behave around it as well.
Yeah, I think they have more access to information than before. So there's more access to information. There's more access to technology, which things that can enhance the learning experience. Platforms, devices. I think in that sense you have more opportunities to grow faster, because I guess before you didn't have the access to that information that easily. Nowadays you can find answers to all your problems very, very quickly. Which also has the side of being perhaps overwhelmed. And I think in that sense, just for the purpose of, developing your knowledge and consolidating knowledge, I think it's, I would say, easier perhaps today. There's obviously more development, more schools with better facilities, I would say. So in that sense, it's a richer experience with more access to information, more opportunities. That's on one side. I think it's a fantastic change or development or evolution, I guess. On the other side, you would also say there's the argument that there's a lot of people out there that have an education as well. So having a degree is almost a given. So I guess there's an inflation of degrees in that sense. So it's pretty hard to compete.
That's correct, actually. Yeah.
It's pretty hard to compete. So you would have to stand out somewhere else. So definitely the minimum you want to have is a master's, whereas before, even without a degree, you would just find something, right? Whereas now it's much more competitive, which you need higher grades or higher degrees, etc. So more competitive, yet the education experience is more comprehensive and wholesome, I would say, than before.
It also feels more isolated from a relationship aspect.
Yeah, that's true.
This is perhaps not just about education, but about even romantic relationships, friendships, how we socialize, social media hijacking our dopamine centers, and other things. But in essence, I guess what part of the value it feels to me, I would love to hear if you agree with this or not. You're bringing also a relationship aspect to the learning experience for the people, aren't you?
Absolutely. I think, when it comes to group lessons, there's that element of forming a support system with your peers. All those people in that classroom are like-minded because they're in the same journey as you are. And as I said, we don't really vet the communications between them. They kind of reach out to each other and form a support system in that sense. So we actually, offering also a wholesome experience in that sense. And it is true that nowadays, the fact that you're born, I guess this generation, they're born with, a mobile phone straight up with an iPad and on social media. So they don't get the need to go and interact with someone else because they get it online, I guess. So that isolates them quite a bit. But what we're doing in this case is actually going back and I guess driving or promoting those interactions and those connections really through group tuition. And as I said, there's a support system that they can form, and it's a fun way to learn as well, as opposed to the one-to-one model. Even though it's something that is tailor-made that can solve your problems without a doubt, there's also an element of having your support system. There's also accountability in group lessons, which means you are also going out of your way to engage in this lesson because there's all these people here. We are working towards this common goal. I need to engage. In that sense, you are developing a more resilient and stronger student in that sense. And going back to the fact that they are isolated nowadays, that's something we've seen on the platform, which is very interesting and fascinating. Is I've seen how they start chatting to each other. They don't know each other at all before the lesson, but once they attend, you can see them chatting. What school are you going to? Where you want to study, etc. What's your exam board? Yeah, that's interesting. Why don't we just create a group? Instagram, Snapchat. That's what they start doing.
It feels magical from your side, right? Like you see people creating that connection, and that's the moment it works.
Exactly. So I think, this is actually working, and if I'm able to build those spaces, and they would also use LessonWise for just to connect with each other, and obviously they can always find 5 fellow students that are interested in the same and share a tutor, for instance. That can always happen, but even for the connection purpose, I think there's something quite powerful there.
I mean, well done on the progress you've shown so far. There are a lot of key lessons in entrepreneurship that are passed around as almost old sayings now. In a way, one of them is focus on the problem, not the solution. I mean, love the problem, not the solution. So you don't get fixated on your specific way of solving it, but rather the problem itself. Another one is do something that is just like, I think was it Ernest Hemingway who said it, write about what you know. I might be quoting that wrong, but the basic premise is the same. Build something, build a business around what you know. And in that case, which is really appropriate for your situation as well, it is an area that you know the pain, you understand the industry, you know the people. And I think that has a huge effect on the trajectory of the business, how it starts, how it grows. So my final question to you, I guess, as we're running towards the end of our time is, what are the next milestones for you and for LessonWise?
I think the way I see LessonWise now is, the next 2 years will be critical. What I want to go with this platform is that I actually build a community of not 20,000 students, but 100,000 students within the next 2 years. I think that once, I build that volume of user base and I have the systems in place and I've, gained traction and I've showed them what it is what is required to deliver engaging group lessons, then I would just let them operate the platform. It will become that vehicle, that go-to marketplace and vehicle to monetize knowledge from the point of view of tutors, and for students to acquire the knowledge they need at affordable rates, which is my vision with this, that we can roll this out for everyone around the world, and not only in the UK but also nations where such programs are quite needed, would actually make an enormous change in the prospects of those children, those students, essentially. So yes, build 100,000 student base within the next 2 years, and obviously hit revenue targets. Obviously, we live in a difficult period, a recessional period, and it is important that we build a sustainable business that we can actually sustain and attain longevity, because I think this can definitely bring positive change to the world, and I want to bring this message to everyone, really.
That's one of the best things about building a business around the learning, because it's just such a big cause that's very easy to get behind. It is a positive impact on the world, and I applaud you for working on this. And I think it's a good combination of, yes, it's a startup, it will make money, it will grow, but it is doing it in a way that is helping society, not taking away from it. So I love to see education startups grow at a pace, and hopefully that will be the case for you. Thank you for all the insights you've shared with us today, Manfred.
Thank you for the opportunity.